Hi, everybody. Welcome to this live stream. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicola Brown. I'm a sustainable textile artist living in rural Ireland, and felt making and eco printing are my passion. I absolutely love participating in selling events such as craft fairs or juried shows. And what I'm going to share with you today is how to make the most out of participating in any kind of event. And for many people, because of the worldwide situation, COVID, etc., and lockdown, for many people, you may be new to participating in events, or maybe you haven't been for several years. And for everybody, this can be a little bit of a hair-raising experience for the first time, or maybe you're looking for new tips, etc. And you might be participating in a craft fair. It could be a market, it could be an exhibition. Maybe you and some of your friends are in a craft group and you're thinking of doing a pop-up shop. It could be a trunk show. It could be a selling event that you organize in your own home or studio, etc., etc. And I know we all come from different backgrounds, so the information that I'm sharing today is not just about selling textiles. This really applies to anybody. So it's wonderful to see people tuning in from all sorts of different parts of the world. Thank you so much. If you're watching this live, there will come a time when I am happy to answer your questions. So I will invite them at various stages throughout the presentation. And at that stage, I'll say, if you have a question about what I've chatted so far, please drop it as a comment and put 3 question marks in front and behind. If you're actually watching this as a replay on YouTube afterwards, please just leave me a comment and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. So the first thing I would say is that this particular conversation is not about how to actually price what you're selling or how to price your craft. But if you are interested, I do have a YouTube video about that. I can drop it as a link afterwards. And also I have a really good checklist for you about preparing for an event and what, when you're setting up your display at the event. So a lot of what I'm talking about today, I'm going to drop a link to a free PDF that you can download afterwards. So don't think you need to take screenshots of things if you don't want to. However, I do think if you have not participated in a show before, I think you'll find my event preparation checklist very helpful. And I see that already, yes, how to price items. And that's not going to be addressed today, but that is going to be for another video. And I already have a video online about that. So let's just start. We'll say you are going to participate in one of these events, or maybe you have something else that you're participating in. The first thing that you need to identify is the event you would like to participate in, is it juried? For example, in Ireland, many of our really good craft fairs, you need to submit, you need to make an application, and that will include maybe a CV and images of your work, a link to your website, and there will be a fee for participating in those events should you be successful. So certainly in Ireland, a lot of those events are in December and at the end of November, and the submission process for them might have taken place in April or May. Sometimes a little bit closer to the time, but you need to plan well in advance for a juried event. They always will cost money, but in my honest opinion, they are really, really worth doing. And an event that is free usually does not have, I'm not saying it's bad, but it usually does not have the level of promotion. It doesn't have the organization. It doesn't have the footfall that an event that you pay for does have. So that is definitely something to consider. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't try your local market or a pop-up shop or something, but if you have to make a financial investment in an event, the event organizers are more likely to have spent time on how they organize it. So that's just something to say. So you may have to book your space in advance. Let's say it is a craft fair in a hotel, a local hotel. You may have to pay a fee for your table. The fee may not be very much, but you still have to pay a fee. You may have to organize your own insurance and provide proof of insurance. So you need to book your space well in advance. And it's definitely good practice to identify A, how much space you will have, B, whether there are sockets for you to plug in electricity, because lighting is something I'll talk about a little later on. Lighting is absolutely essential. You need to light your products really well. So you need to identify whether you're going to have electricity provided, whether it's an indoor space, an outdoor space. If it's a market, do you need to bring a marquee? Are there going to be tables, etc., etc.? So that's something just to consider. And stock, what you're going to bring with you and how you're going to price it. Now, while I'm not going to go into pricing your items today, what I would definitely say to you is have a look at my previous YouTube live stream about pricing your work. And you need to seriously consider what stock you're going to bring. Participating in any event, whether it's a small local event or a larger national, or maybe in the US, maybe it's a big county event or a state event, it really is emotionally draining. It's really exciting and exhilarating. Regardless of whether it's a small or a large event, you're going to put your heart into it and you're going to spend money on getting yourself organized. And I'm going to take you step by step through the things I advise you to consider bringing with you. So I do not recommend that anybody has a low ticket item, regardless of what price all your items are. Don't have something that's almost like what they call in the supermarket trade, a loss leader. Don't just have an item to attract people to your stand that's inexpensive, because actually that is not going to do anything for you in the long run. A, you've got to make those items. They take time and you're not going to make much money on them if you're selling them at a very inexpensive price. You'll get loads of people to your stand, but they may well prevent the people who are going to buy your higher priced items from buying or from approaching the stand. So I recommend that you just stick to the prices that you want for the items that you're going to sell. And when I'm at an event, my least expensive item is 95 euros is really my baseline. I sometimes have a few items slightly under that, maybe an eco-printed t-shirt, but that would be 65 euros. So I honestly, I put in practice what I'm sharing with you today. I'm not saying don't have lower priced items depending on what craft you sell, but don't make the mistake of thinking that a cheap item to lure people to your stand is going to work, or a sale basket, because you spend time making those items as well. So I recommend that you just stick to your regular items and items that you enjoy making, and don't go for that cheap sale. So when you are attending an event, to arrive early is to arrive on time. So if you're attending an event locally, that's all very well. But if you're attending an event out of state or at another part of your country, you may need to consider booking into a bed and breakfast or a hotel. And this is an added expense, but it's definitely worth it if you are prepared in advance and you can make that investment. I always go for somewhere that's quiet, not somewhere that's loud and noisy. I would go the night before, and then I'm there on site for a big event, ready to set up in the morning. I'm always polite to everybody who is organizing the event. I'm always polite to people who are parking me in my truck. There is no point being rude to people, because if you run into problems when you're setting up, if you've been polite and courteous and respectful to people, They are much more likely to help you out if you run into a problem or you discover you've forgotten something or your truck. I got locked into my truck once. I couldn't get out of my truck. Oh my goodness, it's to do with the door and where I had parked. And so people were helpful to me. So it's just something to say to you, do arrive on time for any event. And if it's a longer event where you're actually having to stay overnight anyway, you might consider, if the event finishes late at night, you might consider actually staying an extra night B&B and just hitting the road early in the morning rather than driving when you're really tired. So now this next thing is a thorny one. Friends to help you, yes or no. Bear in mind, I'm sharing my professional experience with you. You can choose to take this or not take it. But I have identified that in general, unless you have a friend that really is happy to do what you want them to do, actually having friends to help can be very detrimental to the whole experience. Now, that does not mean that experienced friends, for example, my great friend Caroline Nixon and my other great friend Alison Smith, they have both come over from England and helped me at my big international event, or the big national event in Dublin. And they were absolutely fantastic. But they understand eco-printing. They understand what I do. We've constantly worked together. We've printed, we've felted together, and they understand exactly what I do. And they are not going to A, distract me, or B, give incorrect information to a potential customer. So the thing about having a friend with you is it's absolutely great to have a friend relieve you while you go to the loo or while you get a coffee or something. But I actually try, and I'll talk about that a bit later, I try never to leave my stand during an event except for going to the toilet. And the reason for that is I put all this energy and effort into making my work, into packing, into going to the event, into selecting the event that I go to. The larger events that I go to in Dublin could cost me just under 4,000 euros for my stand and my accommodation. So I have to really consider carefully. So my advice is, if you have a friend to help you unpack your stock, that's great. If you have somebody who will come and relieve you to go to the bathroom, that's great. But I don't advise you to have a friend that you're chatting to on your stand, because that's detrimental to how you are going to have success and make sales. And I also don't advise you to be on your phone and sending people text messages, etc. And in relation to that, how are people going to know you're attending an event? You absolutely need to drip feed information out in advance of the event. That's a time to tell your friends, your Instagram followers, Facebook. I hope some of you have a weekly newsletter or a regular newsletter, even if it's not weekly. Tell people where you're going. Tell them the number of your stand. Tell them you're on the first floor or the ground floor. Give them all the information they need to know, and never prejudge. Don't force them to come. But equally, don't think that your friends won't be interested. And they may not be interested in buying what you're actually selling, but they may be interested in buying somebody else's work. So you're hoping that other people are inviting their friends as well. So once you've committed to actually doing an event, tell everybody and keep repeating that when you're going, where you're going, what time, where your stand is, etc., etc. A tip, and I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but let's just say you have somebody and they come and they really, really want to chat to on your stand. They might be a friend, or they might be somebody you haven't met before, and they want to learn how you've made the product or whatever. And they're really interested, and they're genuinely interested. But the thing is, you only have got a few minutes, a few seconds to attract somebody's attention, and a few minutes maybe with a potential customer to make a sale. So you don't want to waste time on chatting to people. So what I am inclined to do is, if it's a very important show, I will actually say to these people kindly, look, I'm really sorry, but my voice is starting to go, which it does at an event. My voice is starting to go. I'd love to chat further about this. Here's my card. If it's somebody I don't know, or, you know, with a friend, I'll catch up with you next week and I'll let you know how it went. Nobody is offended, because you just have got to maximize your participation. So let's say you've arrived on time, you've got a friend to help you unpack the truck, etc., etc. So what are you actually going to bring to an event? Now, if you are new to participating in shows, I don't want to overwhelm you with information that you may feel is not what you need. So some of what I'm going to share with you now, this may not be appropriate to your craft, but it may be appropriate to somebody else's craft. So I'm just going to run through everything. And these are things that I personally bring myself when I go to an event. So I obviously have my stock. I've made the decision at home exactly how much I'm charging for everything, how much of each item I bring with me. I make sure that when I'm transporting them, I like clear boxes. If I'm bringing boxes, I like to use clear boxes. And IKEA is where I have got all mine from. They come in different sizes and I can see into the box. So it's easy for me to note what is in the box. So you need boxes sometimes to transport things and maybe also to store items on your stand space or in your truck or your car, however you're delivering them. In my case, because I have clothes, so I like to bring clothes covers. I transport my clothes on their hangers in IKEA clothes covers. I can fit about 8 garments in one clothes cover. And then as soon as I get to the event, I'll put up some hanging rails and I'll hang them so that they are the least creased possible. But when I have them in their clothes covers, I actually just lay them flat on top of my boxes. So I pile up clothes cover on top of clothes cover, and I do that in the back of my truck or my car, and they are probably the least creased. So you may need hangers. But something that I discovered in the last few years of participation, just pre-COVID, that I don't know why I never thought of it before. When I'm traveling to facilitate workshops abroad, I use suitcases with roller wheels, and I use something called packing cubes inside the suitcases. So those are small, like mini, many of you may know what a packing cube is, but if you don't, they're just like a mini little container. They're fabric with a mesh top and handle on them, and they come in all sorts of different sizes. And in Ireland, sometimes you see them in TK Maxx, or you can get them in camping shops. In America, TJ Maxx, or anywhere that sells suitcases, you will find these packing cubes. So the concept is, when you're traveling, you would split your clothes and your laundry up maybe into different cubes. So when you get somewhere, you only need to take out the relevant cubes from your suitcase, not unpack everything. Well, my goodness me, I now use some big old suitcases and packing cubes for transporting a lot of my textiles, and they're way better than the boxes. And it's just incredible. I don't know why I didn't think of it before. So I'm just giving you that tip there now. Consider if you bring soft items, such as clothing, that you use a suitcase and packing cubes. And the suitcase as well is really easy with the wheels. You know, one of the big events that I always participated at regularly in the RDS, which is the Royal Dublin Society in Dublin, there was a lift. My stand, I always chose one upstairs. So with the suitcase, I could just wheel it onto the lift. Whereas with the boxes, I needed a trolley, I needed a hand lifting them. They were very heavy, or else I had to go up and down stairs because the lift was a very small lift and it was constantly full of people. So the next thing, tables. Do you bring your own, or can you order them from the event organizer? And this is a biggie, because if you're doing a market, which I really enjoy participating in the past, and I would hope to do some locally to my farmers market, a local market. I love participating locally where I can to support things, but do you bring your own table or tables, or do you get one at the event? Because sometimes when you get them at an event, they're really wonky and wobbly. So you need to just be clear about this with the event organizers, whether it's a market or a pop-up shop. Do you need to bring your own table? And I used to bring party tables, which are really great. They're the sort of plastic ones I have in my studio. They fold in half, they have a handle to carry them. And I used to bring a couple of those to events. But laterally, I chose to buy some IKEA wooden tables and I painted them to complement the rest of my display. I'll show you some of my display items later, just so you can see that. A stool or a chair. I'm a firm believer in not sitting down in my stand space at all, but I do appreciate for some people, you know, if you have health issues, you may need to sit down. And I find that either a wooden cube that I can that can double up for display if necessary is actually quite handy. I had one made for me, or a stool. I would only recommend a chair if you absolutely cannot stand on or sit on a stool. You need to have everything as streamlined as possible. But it is very handy having a stool because you may need to get up high to hang some lighting or something. So you do need something to stand on, or those little steps to stand on. So do you need a tablecloth? One of my absolute pet hates, tablecloths. So I had a tablecloth made for me, a linen tablecloth. I bought fabric and my friend made one for me. And I like to use bed risers with my table, certainly with one table, if I'm using those party tables. And what a bed riser is it's something that goes under a bed to make it higher. And you can also get them, in some bedding supply stores, but maybe in an orthopedic store. In America, often college towns have them because students like rising their bed up and storing things under it. So I had a tablecloth made that I could put bed risers under my table to raise it up. And then I had a cloth that came over the top and it had like a nice linen skirt that went right down to the ground. So that table with that specific cloth was where I used to store things underneath at an event. So they were out of sight. And it is vital if you're doing that and you're using a tablecloth that you iron it. Please, please do not have tablecloths that are just creased all the time. It just looks so tacky. Now, there is something that you can get online. And while I am personally not a fan of fabric that is not natural, there are very good looking, simple, stretchy tablecloths that you can get on Amazon, and they cover, they're obviously an artificial fabric, but they cover the table and they cover right down to the ground. They stretch over the table and they've got an opening at the back, and you can put things in from behind under your table and they can't be seen from the front, and they're not expensive. So they would certainly be worth actually considering. Now, somebody has popped up this in the comments. I'm keeping a little eye on comments, but not answering questions yet. So yes, lengths of PVC pipe are excellent and they fit on a lot of different table legs and you can raise them up. And those are really useful if you're a felter as well, or when you're eco printing, if you want to make your table higher. So that's a great tip. Thank you very much for that. So I recommend, if you've textiles, that you bring an iron. Then are you going to have a mannequin or not have a mannequin? And that is a big question. And if you have a mannequin, is it going to be a tabletop mannequin or a floor standing one? They do take up space, but they are excellent for draping things on. So if you were a jeweler, for example, you might have a torso or just a head and a shoulders, and it's beautiful to put a necklace on or maybe earrings. You might have body parts. You might have a hand for rings. Now, excuse my hands. I was eco printing yesterday and I haven't, I've had 2 baths, but I haven't used lemon juice on them yet. So they're a little stained. But if you had rings, you might have a hand that you put your rings on. You might need wall hanging display. I'm going to, as I say, share some of my own display materials with you in a minute so you can see the sort of things I have. But Pinterest is a great resource for actually finding different display ideas. Yeah, so floor or tabletop display. Something that I really like, you can get nice sort of, they're almost like a cardboard clipboard with a sort of a big bulldog clip on top. In America, you might call that a binder clip. And they can look really nice with jewelry hung on them. And you could just put something small at the back to make them stand up on your table and have a series of them. And I do think that when you have displays that look cohesive, like everything is the one color or it's made from the one material, it is much more effective at showing off your products. Do you need to bring a mirror? If it's garments for people to wear, how close to a bathroom are you where there might be a mirror? Would you allow people to go to that and use it? My recommendation is always to have a mirror with you. And if you are a jeweler, obviously a tabletop mirror is great, and maybe a handheld mirror. And for somebody who's selling garments, I think you can do a lot worse than have a decent sized mirror that you either hang on a wall or you have a cheval mirror that stands up by itself. But do consider the floor space. You don't want to clutter your stand, so position your mirror carefully. And now we come to one of my peeves and my top recommendations. For really successful events, you need to invest in lighting. And that could be as simple as you bringing your own spotlights with you. It could be you paying for lighting at the event you're participating in. And this lighting needs to be functional. It doesn't need to be quirky. And honestly, for those of you who celebrate Christmas or attending Christmas events, you don't need twinkly, sparkly lights. You need your product to shine, not your display of other people's product. So I cannot recommend this enough. So when I go to a major event, I actually had a friend at quite a bit of expense to me make some amazing lights for me. So I bought a whole series of spotlights, and very, very simple white ones. I got them in IKEA, I bought all the wiring, and we did a whole series of panels. So I have these MDF or timber panels that are painted gray, which is the color I have everything else. And then the spotlights are on them and there are holes in the top of them and I can hook them on places. So I can hook them discreetly so they can't be seen by the client. They could be up behind a board. They could be in my changing room and coming out. So I can hang all these different lights, or I can have uplighters. So you really, really need to, you don't need to spend a fortune, but you need to consider that. Some of the best lights are in IKEA, I have to say. You can get clip-on spotlights and they're excellent. They have LED lights. They don't take much electricity. But if you're going to bring lights like that, do you have access to a socket? You've got to just remember that. Have you booked electricity? At the bigger events, you need to pay for electricity and you also need to pay for sockets. So you could pay for lighting and they will put lighting on your stand, but you might need to pay for sockets. And for me, it's always worthwhile spending extra. I pay for lighting or sockets, and then I have somewhere to charge my phone or my iPad. More about the iPad later. So I say lighting needs to be functional, not cute. Packaging. You're going to need some packaging to give people your product in. And that can be as simple as brown craft bags. You could have a stamp made with your logo on it. You could pop it on it. You might choose to go down the route of gift boxes, particularly for jewelry or expensive clothing items. You might need acid-free tissue paper, but all of these take space. So I have pretty expensive boxes as part of my branding and packaging, but they come flat. So I can actually transport them flat. And then I just get up really early every morning. If I'm at an event, I'm usually at the event, you know, at 7 or 8 o'clock, even if it doesn't open till 10 or 11. And I would just make up a selection of boxes for the day based on what my sales were like the previous day. And then they're brown craft boxes. I also have branded hangers, coat hangers or clothes hangers that are brown craft with my logo on them. So my boxes can then be stacked and almost form part of the display. They can go under the table, etc. So picture hanging supplies are great if you're going to an event that has what is called a shell scheme. So a shell scheme is that sort of backdrop that bigger professional shows will have. It's like hard walls and they all clip together, and you need something that will hook over the top of that so you can hang things on it, such as a mirror. So you're not going to be screwing into the wall, you're going to be hanging from the top. So picture hanging supplies can be really good. And I use picture hanging hooks and something called Purlon. And Purlon is a clear nylon cord that will attach onto the hook above. And then I have little clips that are on that I can raise up or down. And then when I hang something on that, such as my mirror, you don't see any fixing, so, and the clear hanging thing blends into the background. Double-sided foam tape, that is absolutely wonderful, and that is what I would always have some really good signage, and that is what I would physically stick signage onto something using that double-sided foam tape. If you're going to a bigger event, a screwdriver, electric drill, all the fittings you might need, clothes pegs, or in America, I think you call them clothes pins. Those are really, really handy, and I use double-sided foam to stick them onto the wall, and then I can just have a line of pegs and I can hang scarves from them. They look great. By the way, if you are enjoying what I'm sharing, please just hit the like button, share with your friends, consider subscribing to my channel. You know, if you're finding this information useful for you. So do not forget scissors, an inventory list. I confess I don't always have an inventory list. I confess there's only one show I personally go to with an inventory list, but it is very helpful having one. I have to say, I may sound organized, and I'm very organized when it comes to preparing for an event, but I'm not good at lists. I'm not good at paperwork. So that is really not good for me. It's always helpful to know, you know, have a list, and then you can just tick things off as they're selling. Clipboard. So I have a nice clipboard, and I put I have my logo on the back of the clipboard, and I'll clip my inventory list onto that if I'm at a big event, the event where I have to have it. And I used to take everybody's email address and their name on that. I'd have my clipboard, and I would take their names down by hand, but I don't do that anymore. I have my email service provider that I deliver my newsletter with. I actually bring an iPad with me, or I can do it from my phone, but the iPad is much easier, and you have to be careful you don't get things stolen at an event. So I bring my iPad, and if somebody comes to me and they're interested in workshops, or they're interested in a newsletter, or they want more information, I just explain that I'm sorry, I don't have time to run through everything there and then, but if they would like to sign up to my mailing list, I just get their email address there and then and their name, and I add them to my list. So I make sure I have Wi-Fi at events, or I have my phone to use for the Wi-Fi. So I cannot recommend that enough. It makes it so much easier than trying to chat to people about upcoming workshops, what you have, etc., etc. Just say you'll get back to them afterwards and get their details and enter it in on the iPad. Business cards and flyers. Always, always, always have information to give to people. But like I said, don't try and chat through everything there and then, because you only get those few minutes to make your sale or whatever. Don't neglect, though, to have information that people can take home with them. And so what I have done is I have a postcard sized, it's very nice, a lovely image of eco printing on front. It's instead of a flyer, explains a tiny bit about what I do. It's got my contact details, and it also has details about the care of my items. And I have a clear perspex display thing, and I can just stick that on the table, and I can put those in that. I also have business cards, but really I tend to use the postcard size one now. If people want something that I actually hand them. And I also include one of those in every package, every gift box when I sell an item. And yeah, we'll come to what goes swing cards in a minute. So flyers, I do sometimes bring flyers, and again, they have a little bit of information about the studio, about what I share with people, you know, such as an upcoming workshop, images of work, care of the garments, etc., etc. And they are easy to hand out if you want to, if you choose to go down that route. And I have found Vista Print, I don't know if that's available worldwide, but certainly I have found Vistaprint excellent, and they do environmentally friendly inks and papers and stuff as well. So you can pick and choose, but don't go down the rabbit hole of getting loads of things printed. Just stick to one thing or two things and don't get huge quantities, because what can happen is you update the information you have, or even new workshops coming up. And I've made that mistake myself in the past. It's much less expensive to buy in bulk, but you may not need everything, and then you have to recycle it. And a tip for you, if you're going to a big event, what I would do with the like of Vistaprint, and I've also done it for other products, order them in advance of the event and get them delivered to the event if the event organizers will allow that, or meet the courier, the person who's delivering it outside the event, and bring them in. Then you don't have to pack them in your vehicle. So good signage is essential, and it needs to be easy to read from a distance. Anything fancy is not really good. It's a bit like the lighting. It doesn't want to be cute. Your stand wants to look really beautiful and show your work off. But equally, you want people to be able to identify your stand from a distance. So I recommend good, clear signage, easy to read. Now, a friend introduced me to how wonderful moist wipes were at events. And as I said earlier, you don't have to bring all of this stuff with you, but it is really good to know how handy these sort of things are. If somebody comes along with sticky fingers, you can use the moist wipes. You can use them for all sorts of things. Tissues, make sure you have some. Food, drink, and snacks. Never be seen eating on your stand. However, it's really important that you do stay energized. So what I find is things like having nuts with you, seeds, maybe some raisins, some oat cakes or rice cakes, maybe a bit of pate or smoked fish spread or something. Come off your stand. And that's the time when a friend comes to help you. You can just stand back from your stand a little bit, let them stay in there. Grab a quick high protein snack. Hummus is really good. Have some chocolate and take advantage and have plenty of drinks during the day, and then you've got your moist wipes to clean your hands afterwards. This is really important. Credit card machine. So in America, I was always very envious because for many years you've been able to use Square. Here in Ireland, SumUp is fantastic. And any of these machines, they need, usually their app needs to be updated. So that's something to consider. If you're going to an event and you haven't been somewhere since lockdown, make sure that you've updated your app, because there is some maintenance with them and it takes, could take a few minutes. If there isn't going to be Wi-Fi available where the event is, do you need to have your cell phone connection for your credit card machine? That's just something to consider. Do you deal mainly in cash? You're going to need change. I predominantly use a credit card machine because my customers tend to pay with card, and that's great. And I discovered a couple of years ago that with my SumUp machine, I don't even have to have put the card in the machine with people if they don't want to do that. They can just give me their smartphone number. And with my app, I can send them a message. They can type the details in on their own phone, and I never get the card into my hand. So just investigate some of those sorts of things. But older people often like paying with a check or in cash, and you have to make sure you have enough change, and you can cope with that. You can never have too many extension leads and sockets. Are you going to have hanging rails, or are you going to have freestanding furniture if you need to hang things? Do you need a trolley? I'm not sure if you call it a trolley, maybe a truck in other parts of the world, but a trolley is like a hand trolley where you can put your boxes on and stack them to get them in from your vehicle. Swing tags. Swing tags are a tag that you put on your product, and it might have quite a bit of information or just a very small bit of information, but it will definitely have the price of your product. And I recommend that every single product on your stand that is on display, not necessarily the ones in the box, under the table. Every single product has a price. And I recommend that you put some of your items that are a higher price, make them to the front of your stand and make them very visible for people. Do not hide the price of your items. Be proud of what you are selling. And I did mention at the beginning, but for those of you who've joined me later, please consider looking at my YouTube video about pricing your craft, because you may be horrified to discover that some items that you're selling are not going to make you money, or you're losing money. And it may just give you a better insight into what you might want to bring with you to an event. But don't be afraid to put your price on every last thing. Many people need to see your work 3 times before they will invest in it. Other people may just be too shy to ask you, or they may feel you're going to give them a hard sell. So just have prices very visible on everything, and trust me, you will sell more. Then as to what you wear yourself, I recommend that you dress in layers. That if you are a jeweler, obviously you wear your own jewelry. If you are a textile artist, you wear your textiles. Just make sure that whatever you're wearing is appropriate for your product and it complements the stand. Then sure is not what I meant to write. I was typing quickly before I came live. So what I meant to write was shoes. Make sure you have comfortable shoes, because you're going to be on your feet for hours and hours on end. If you have a wooden floor, you're luckier than if it's a cement floor. But just make sure that you have comfy shoes. And I have learned from experience that I actually usually at bigger events, I don't wear shoes at all. I wear either really funky socks sometimes, but usually I wear very plain socks that are a similar color as the carpet or the floor I'm standing on. And I find my feet get far less tired. And aside from if I have a funky pair of socks on, nobody has once ever made any comment. They just do not notice I'm not wearing shoes. So that's a tip for you. And I do think a receipt book is really good to have. Now, when people make a purchase using the credit card, they're obviously going to get, well, if they choose a receipt, I would always give them a receipt. But I like to write every sale down in a receipt book by hand and give the customer a physical copy of it. I use carbon paper in the receipt book, and then afterwards I just tot up my sales. And I have to say I'm very competitive. Who would have thought? So I'm very competitive. So I would always make friends, of course, with people on either side of me on the stand, but we'd often have a little bit of friendly banter about how things were going. But if you're having a good show and somebody else isn't, do not make them feel bad. But if you're having a great show and they're having a great show, you can be really competitive. Who's going to get the first sale, the biggest sale, etc., etc. I can actually remember one show where the lady beside me made a massive sale. She had a collector come and buy a piece for about, I don't know, it was a few thousand. And she had problems putting that payment through at the beginning, and I helped her. She was just so thankful. So just be very helpful and respectful to everybody else. Don't worry if you've somebody beside you selling similar work. Don't worry, even if it's less expensive. Don't worry if you've somebody beside you selling work that you really don't like, because there is something for everybody, and that's really important. And being polite, friendly, and courteous, you'll have a far better show. So I actually forgot to ask, does anybody have questions? And then I'll show you a few pictures of me or of my setup when I was setting up at an event. So I'm just going to go back here and see. If you have a question, please just put a couple of few question marks in first. So I don't think there are any questions. There was, we did say this, but definitely if people are interested, I will have a future video where I will just chat again about pricing items. And I know that you realized that was not going to be the topic today. Okay, so I don't see any questions coming in. So I think I'll just share here. Okay, so I'm just going to go through me setting up a stand at an event. Now, this was at the really big event in Dublin. So I was up on the balcony. It's wooden underneath the carpet. And you can see here, I had my sister, in fact, help me at this event. And this was great. And we just unpacked the truck. So when you unpack your vehicle, whatever the vehicle is, do not leave products visible in your car or your van. That is a sure recipe for getting them stolen, getting your van broken into. And you need to keep a very close eye on your money, your phone, and your iPad, etc., as you set up. So that's just something that it is really important to note. So another reason for not bringing the kitchen sink with you, just bring exactly what you need. So I'm going to go through these slides and then I'm going to check your the questions. So you need to be flexible with your layout. So you may need to take pillars into consideration. So if you look here at this here, this was at the big event. You can see I had obviously paid for spotlights. There are spotlights up at the top. I added extra lighting, but you can see here I've just started to unpack things. And I put up my hanging rails first, and then I hung my clothes in the covers on them. You can see I've got a suitcase, but you may discover that you have a pillar that you didn't realize. You can see that pillar in front of me. So you need to be a little bit flexible. I would always identify from the person who I'm booking the space from, A, how much space I had, and B, you know, if there was anything like that on the floor plan. But you need to remember that it may not be quite the way you think it is when you get there. So hang them up as soon as you get there to leave your, you know, make sure that clothes have the least amount of creases. And you can see that I'm starting to set up a table there. And in fact, the show after this one, which was the last one pre-lockdown, I had new hanging displays made for me that also matched the tables. So this was the last year that I used the IKEA tables. When I go back, actually, if you look at the hanging things on the left where the scarves are, you can see my swing tags are already hanging. So I actually transported those scarves with the swing tags on them. And I use shower hooks on the IKEA rail, and then each of the scarves can hang in an individual shower hook. So I made my swing tags from craft card, put my stamp on it, and then the other side of the card said what the fabric composition of the scarf was and what it was eco-printed with. Okay. Then here I am. So I was concentrating on getting all my props painted and into position before I added my stock. So you can see this was the first year this was the first year I started painting, or I brought tables. I had already been painting my plinths. So behind my hand with that paint roller, you can actually see a plinth with a little hole in the front of it. That's a plinth I had made for me with a door that opens. So that's where I would put my iPad and anything, you know, money and stuff like that during the show. And I would make sure it was always closed. And then the taller things you can see behind me, I actually had a changing room made for myself, and that's part of the changing room. Then the heads that you can see on the ground, those were also made to my spec, and I hang them and I can put clothing on them, so I can hang them. But I know people who've had heads or, you know, torsos like that done, and they prop them on their table. So this was at a different, this was in the evening after I'd set a lot of things up. This was actually a previous event, not the one where I had the nice gray props. And I actually just ironed these, gave these ones a final iron. Now these are lamb's wool that I eco-printed. And actually the lamb's wool, I was able to hang this up with sticky backed Velcro, the hook part of the Velcro. I would often use that to press felt onto, or to have wool. It would stick up on it. And let me see, have I any more slides here? So this is just an image of the space that I set up with my sister. So you can see I've got a tabletop mannequin with that indigo dyed piece on it. I have, my heads are behind and I have silk scarves on them. you can see that rather than swing tags hanging out of those particular scarves, I have card stuck onto the wall. Then on the table, I have some cowls with each one has a card beside it with what it's printed with and what it costs. And then if you look closely on the right-hand side of this image, I'm afraid the image isn't the sharpest because A, I was using an older phone, and B, this was taken late one of the evenings and it was a bit dark. But you can actually see my brown craft boxes that I've made up for the next day. They're slotted in behind the hanging rails there. So here's another corner of that specific stand that my sister Lizzie and I set up. So the mannequin that's on the plinth, I updated an old shop mannequin, and there is a full tutorial for that on my YouTube channel. So basically with that mannequin, I did papier-mâché on it and I painted it. It was a horrible plastic one, but I got it free and it makes a great tabletop mannequin. Whereas the other one in the previous image, if I go back, was a very expensive one from Milan. It's got a beautiful wooden base and it's got fabulous fabric. It's a really nice mannequin, but you can't beat something that you get free and that you can upcycle. And then I put some hooks over the top of my changing room, and those are big lamb's wool throws that are hanging there. And you can also see that the curtain on my changing room was eco-printed fabric, and I put a command hook near the front of the space on the wall, and you can see I have a large piece of Japanese kimono silk, I think, that was eco-printed hanging on that. But you can be inventive with your display. And this is just an image of me at a juried show that one of the press people took. And again, those are scarves and they are hanging on shower hooks on an IKEA stand. So I'm just going to check and see your comments. I need to remove this from the stream. So I'm just going to go back and check and see, are there some questions now that have just come in? But please remember, if you're watching this as a replay, you can ask me a question as a comment on YouTube and I will get back to you when I can. So, okay. So people copying information and taking photos, let them at it, is all I would say. Honestly, people always try and copy things, but they will not do it as well as you. Well, I mean, some people may, but you know what I mean? You can waste your life thinking about these sort of things. I would say there are a few branding things. When I had branding advice, I was told never, ever, ever reveal certain information. So there are a few little things that I keep to myself, for example, where I get my boxes from. And it's one of the few things because it's a real part of my brand. But I do say to people they are craft boxes. I just found it difficult to get ones that would fit my work. So that's something that I don't share. But honestly, I just think I'm generous with the information I share. If somebody wants to make, let's say, eco-printed scarves, good luck to them. I mean, if they come to me for a workshop, I have had a situation and it really upset me at the time, which I won't go into, but I wasted so much time and energy when I gave somebody information and told them when I was releasing my new collection, and I gave them the name of the supplier where I got my fabric from, and they brought out their work before I had mine done, and then people thought I was copying them. I was very upset at that, but at the end of the day, you can't stop people. So if you don't want to give information out, that's absolutely fine, but I would be generous with what I share, and I don't worry about people copying me. Now, to follow on here, so I once brought a printing book. That's not appropriate if people are taking pictures of somebody else's book. And when you say you brought a printing book, I don't know quite, Adriana, why you had it there on your display if it wasn't yours. So I don't actually know that, but definitely I don't think it's appropriate for people to be taking pictures of a book. And you know, especially if it's somebody else's book. If it's your own book, you can just ask them respective, you know, with respect not to if you don't want them to, but I actually don't mind. But I have to say that in general, people are very respectful and they will ask me, may I take photos of your work? But if I see them taking pictures of the work, I just let them on it anyway. Okay, so thank you so much, Karen. You're very welcome about that. You're very welcome. And here's another question. So would I share the story of being disappointed after an event? Absolutely. And this, this is an experience that happened to me this year. And I don't want to mention what the event is because I don't want to be bad-mouthing somebody really, but there was something that I was invited to participate in and to demonstrate at. It was going to be a 2-day event. And I was invited last November and I was given assurances I would have a specific space that was going to be really good. And I could then sell my work if I wanted to. And I would have loads of space in a fantastic place. So the bottom line was I had to book accommodation for 3 days. And because I'm helping care for my mother and another relative part-time, I'm not really doing any events this year or for the foreseeable future myself, aside from one particular event at Christmas. So I had decided that this was going to be my way of giving to the community. It was an event that was very close to my heart. It was all to do with traditional trades and craft. And I thought, I'm going to have a really nice time. It's going to be really hard work. I had to pack up like my big propane burner, half my studio. I had to get organized. I was going to be 3 days on the road, and selling was just going to be, you know, I wasn't focusing on selling, but I was bringing work to sell. I was focusing on giving to a community and enjoying an event that I believed in. And I got there and nothing was sorted, nothing was organized. There was no space set up, etc., etc. I had to check into the B&B and go back that night. Nothing was organized. And by the following morning, it usually takes me like a long time to set up for a show. But if I'm setting up my propane burner and I'm carting gas in and everything else, you know, it could take me, I went the day before because it could take me 10 hours to set up, it could take me 5 hours. And anyway, by the following morning, nothing was organized. The marquees weren't there. Nothing was organized. And I ended up turning around and coming home and losing all that money in time. I was absolutely fuming. So that was an event where the event organizers were not charging me. And at the beginning, I said, it is always better to pay for an event. And I basically broke my own rule because I wasn't paying for the space, but it was an event that I personally believed in. It was traditional trade event, you know, crafts like blacksmithing, barrel making, basket weaving, etc., natural dye. So I believed in the event and I decided to participate as my way of giving to them. And I was going to do free demonstrations for 2 days. And if I sold something, that would be great. But anyway, it was a catastrophe. But I've also done events. I've done events where they are free to participate because I believe, you know, community events that I believe in. And usually you do a lot of work and you may sell or you may not sell. But I have on a few occasions done things that I would never do now. For example, somebody said to me before Valentine's Day quite a few years ago, it was a good friend of mine, oh, I really, really wish you had felt hearts. I would love to have, I'd love to buy felt hearts. So I made a whole series of felt hearts for Valentine's Day. I hated every minute of making them. I was at the market, the food and craft market that I was a member of, and I didn't sell one. And that was a waste of time. So that was very disappointing. Okay, so this question, do you add laundering instructions on your products? So I don't have laundering instructions on my products. So for example, my silk scarves or, you know, garment. Now I don't sell what I'm wearing myself, but I do have some garments that I would have made that I would sell. I don't have any label on those. This is my personal choice. I have no label on those except for my own label, you know, just my signature. But I do every garment, you know, I would have care instructions would go with every garment, and I would have like my card, which is my big postcard size thing, and a smaller card, and then my swing tag, which attaches to the item that would also have the care instructions on it. So my swing tag would have the care, it would have the composition of the fabric, and it would have what it was printed with, or if it was felt, what it was made from and how to wash it. I do think that in some countries there may be legal obligations if you were a big business, but from the craft perspective, I don't know of any craft person like me who physically sews a care label into their garment. So I don't think it can be a legal requirement here in Ireland, and probably not in Europe, but in some countries there may be different requirements, and I'm not a legal person. And when can I come to Clasheen? I may do a sort of like a kind of pretty high-end workshop next summer here at Clasheen, where I will facilitate the workshop, but people will stay locally. There's fantastic accommodation locally to me here. It just really depends how things work out. But I am actually always open. If people want to come here and study with me privately, rather than organizing a big workshop for a group of people, I am open to chatting about that. But that would all be in 2023. Okay, I think if there are any last minute questions, please can you just pop them in as a question now, as a comment now, because I see we've been 1 hour, which is amazing. And I'm just saying, yeah, yeah, it'd be great to have you here, Emily. I'm just going to pop a link to this Facebook group. So if you are a wet felter, or if you are an eco printer who's interested in developing a sustainable practice and working without traditional powdered mordants, of course, eco printers who use mordants are also welcome to join, but the discussion is all about working without them. Please consider joining my public Facebook group, and if you're not already a member. And also, I have a weekly newsletter, which is filled in general, I hope, with tips and advice and information about upcoming live streams, etc., etc. So there will be a link to that in the video description below. I'm going to make sure that's there as soon as I finish the live stream. But also, I am going to put a link into the video description once it's finished. So if you view the video on YouTube, just look in the video description afterwards. I have a PDF file. Actually, I can share with you what the file looks like. Let me add it here to the stream. Let me remove the banner. So I have a PDF file, and it gives you the information that I've shared today, maybe even more concisely. And then there's an empty page at the back that you can put your own things in. It's also got links to my previous videos on YouTube that go into things. One is about preparing for the event, one is on the day of the event, and then one is about pricing craft. So there are links to those videos in the PDF, and you get a checklist that you can print off and download and print. Okay, so I'm just looking to see, are there any final questions? Oh, thanks, Karen. And Karen is saying that she loves the Facebook group. So you can see what other people are doing. You can share pictures of your own work. You can share your successes. You can share your disappointments, everything. It's a really nice way of communicating with people. And for those of you who are members, Lisa Henderson, who's in England, shared wonderful photos last week of her sitting in this huge big pot that she had found. And it turned out she managed to find more than one pot. So I am actually buying one and getting it over to Ireland from England. So you can share things that will help other people. There's no self-promotion, no spam, and it's all about developing a sustainable textile practice. So look, I think that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, if there are any gentlemen, thank you so much for your attention, for your questions. I hope you found this helpful. As I say, you may not need to do everything or bring everything that I suggested, but that's a comprehensive list of what I would do if I was going to any event myself. So thank you all so much. I look forward to seeing you in the next live stream. And if you are interested in pricing craft, I will consider doing one of those very shortly too. Thanks a million. Over and out from Clasheen.